Did you just create a ClickUp workspace for your internal marketing team but have no idea how to set it up? Well, if that's the case, you've come to the right place. In this video, I'm going to walk you through step by step how you need to structure and build out your ClickUp workspace to provide more visibility, clarity, and to help your team do better work faster inside of ClickUp. Let's get started. So the first thing that we need to discuss is the ClickUp hierarchy. And this is super important because the hierarchy, when designed correctly, is really going to be what unlocks the views and dashboards that you're going to need for visibility and reporting purposes. So you need to make sure you spend some time working on your ClickUp hierarchy, getting this correct before you actually go and start putting work into the system. So for an internal marketing team, oftentimes you're going to have one ClickUp workspace for your entire company. And so this ClickUp workspace is essentially going to have probably different teams within your organization. So maybe the product team's in here, maybe you have more, the sales team or customer success, or maybe you have your own ClickUp workspace just for your marketing team. Whether or not that's the case, we're going to build out our hierarchy the same. So essentially the way that we look at this is, again, you have a ClickUp workspace, and in that ClickUp workspace, you're then going to have spaces, which is sort of the highest level underneath the ClickUp workspace. So your spaces, the way that these are going to be represented by, are these are going to be teams or departments within your organization. So for the marketing team, essentially you're going to have one marketing space, and inside of that marketing space is essentially going to be all the work for your marketing team. So within that space, we then have folders and lists and then parent tasks and subtasks to help us organize and really divvy up that work. So as I open up this marketing space here, you'll see I have a bunch of different folders, one of them being campaigns, then we have marketing management and an internal folder here as well. So again, all of our marketing work is going to live within this one space, which the beauty of that is then I can see all work across my whole marketing team here at the space level. Now, when I dive down to each of these folders, as I mentioned, the first folder is going to be campaigns. So if you're a marketing team that works and runs in campaigns, maybe you run a campaign for a month, for a quarter, for a year, or however long, it's super important that you're able to track and see all of the work that happens within a certain campaign and then be able to compare that to the actual results that came from that campaign. That way you kind of know what worked and what didn't and what's been accomplished and what we've actually finished within that campaign. So that's why we're breaking it up into campaign lists here. So again, all of your campaign work is going to live in this folder, and then we're going to have lists for each of those campaigns. So essentially the way that this is going to work is each of these lists represents a campaign. And when I have a new campaign, I'm going to create a new list in here, label that campaign 3, and then I'm going to put all the work for that campaign within that campaign list. In addition, when maybe a campaign finishes up and I don't need it anymore, there's no more work going into that, I can come here and I can actually archive that list. That way, maybe if I need to bring it back later on, I can see that because I've just archived it instead of deleting it. So that's really the process you'll follow. In addition to that, the cool part about this is at the folder level, again, you'll be able to see all the work across your campaigns, but in addition, you can leverage campaign docs like this. So if you have some sort of brief template that you want to use to be able to kind of centralize all this campaign documentation in one place, you can do that here at the folder level. As you can see here, all the creative elements, the channels, the KPIs, deliverables, timeline, budget allocation, resources, and context, things like that. I can put all of that here in one place. So after our campaigns, we then have a marketing management folder. Essentially, the biggest difference with this to your campaigns is this is really the work that is marketing, but it's not tied to a specific campaign. So whether it's random website updates or ad hoc social posts or creating pitch decks or things like that, that might not necessarily be tied to a specific campaign, but your marketing team is doing it. So in terms of the way that this is set up, again, you have a marketing management folder. Underneath that, you have a bunch of different lists, and these lists essentially represent work categories. So you're just going to kind of organize your work that way. As you can see, I have a couple of examples here, a website list where I put all my website work. I have a social list where I put all my social work. I can have a general, but again, you can have other things like creative, content, whatever way you want to divvy up that work. Just think about what you need visibility into. Like, do you want to see how much time you spend on website work or social work and things like that? Think about sort of the views and reporting you're going to want later on and use that to kind of build out your lists for work categories. In addition, here you'll also see another list called work requests. This is kind of a great way for you to create a list like this to centralize all those work requests from different teams. So I can build out a form here, and we have another video on forms that I'll put in the top right for you to kind of see how this form could be built. But a form essentially here, I can put all the fields and stuff to capture the information that I'm going to need, and then I can make it public and send it out to my organization, to the sales team, to the HR department, whoever. They can have that form. They're going to fill it out whenever they want something from the marketing team. So whether they want a piece of creative, a pitch deck, or something like that, they can use that form to request that work. All those work requests will come into this list, and then I can sort of assign that and create that work later on. So you can also put that into your marketing management folder here as well. After that, we also have an internal folder, and the reason this is important is because you want your ClickUp workspace to be your single source of truth. So if you want to see workload and things like that, you need to make sure you get all of your work here into the system. So as our team, we probably have internal work as well. That's not necessarily marketing deliverables and things like that. You might have internal meetings, so maybe it's a weekly stand-up, or maybe this happens every single day. You want to make sure that you get your meetings in here. As you can see, I can also take all of my meeting notes and put them into ClickUp, so everything's in one place so everyone can see that in here. You can also have lists for ClickUp and project management if there's any random tasks. I can have a list for professional development, for party planning, however you want to organize this work. Again, this is sort of work categories here as well, but make sure you get all of your internal work here into the system. In addition, another idea you can use is in this folder, you can have, if maybe you're the manager of your marketing team and you have a variety of different direct reports, I can create a list for each of those people. And that list can just be their name. And essentially in that list, it can be private so that only they and myself can see it. And then what I'm able to do is put docs in there for me to run my one-on-ones and things like that. So all that information can be stored in ClickUp as well. You don't need to use an external system for that. But again, just remember, get your internal work in here because that's going to be super important when it comes to workload and things like that for your team. It's super important to have a single source of truth and get everything into one system. So after that, that's really our main sort of hierarchy and levels within our marketing space. Once you get that complete, then you're almost ready to start adding work here into the system. Okay, so now we're going to move into step 2. So obviously step 1 is designing your hierarchy. Now step 2 is going to be building out your processes inside of ClickUp, because before you start adding tasks in here, we want to make sure that we get our processes built out and saved as templates. That way we have a good structure. That way we have that legit tasks of what people are going to do, and it's going to save you a ton of time when it comes to actually creating and assigning out that work. So what I would recommend is after you build out your marketing space with this structure in here, what you want to do is build out a process library space as well. So this process library space is essentially going to be where you are able to build, store, manage, and edit, optimize all of your process templates that you do here as a marketing team. So think about whether you do blog posts, think about whether you do website page updates, think about all those things that you do as a marketing team. We need to make sure that we get all of those workflows built out here inside of our process library, because we can save them as ClickUp templates, but the template center in ClickUp is great. You just can't edit those templates. So it's super important to build them here in a process library. That way you have the source files before you actually go and save them as ClickUp templates. So here, essentially, I have a bunch of different folders in here. What I would recommend for you is that you just have maybe a couple folders in here. One of them would just be for marketing processes, and the other could be for those internal processes. Just think about, you can really organize it however you want. This is not as important as our marketing space over here, because I'm not really going to need this for views and things like that. It's not my active work that's happening. It's just a place for me to store those source files for my process templates. So in here, I'll give you a good example. I have a delivery task templates folder, and essentially the way that I'm organizing this is, again, really with those work categories. So again, as a marketing team, think about those work categories, build them out as lists here. That way they're just organized and easy for you to find. So maybe if you're looking for something that's related to paid search or paid social or SEO, I can easily go and find that in that specific list. So once you've built out that structure of your process library, I also recommend that you actually prioritize what you need to build first. So start to think about what are those processes and those deliverables that you really do over and over and over again. So maybe you're a marketing team that does a lot of podcast episodes, or maybe you do a lot of blog posts or a lot of videos. Think about what those ones are that you really need to build out first because you're doing them all the time. Those will be the most important. In addition, think about ones that you don't have documentation on at all. Those will also be important, and then maybe ones that are going to be very painful if you don't have that workflow built out right away when you actually go and implement ClickUp for your team. So start to prioritize what processes you need to build out. We have a great resource I'll link in the description below that's going to be very helpful for you to kind of go through this exercise, get your team together, and prioritize what processes you need to build. But once you prioritize those, I'll show you a few examples of what those could look like. I'll go into my inbound list here and we'll kind of talk through what your processes need to look like here inside of ClickUp. So as you can see here, I have a bunch of different examples. I have a podcast episode, a case study, landing page, press release, all the way down to a blog post. I have all these built out and structured here inside of my process library. So I'll go through the podcast episode, and essentially the way that this is going to be broken down and built is your parent task is going to be the deliverable. So as you can see here, this is my parent task: podcast, case study, quiz, calculator, landing page, infographic. Those are my deliverables that I'm going to do and complete. However, what I need to do now is break that up into a bunch of different subtasks. And these basically represent all of the actionable tasks that our team needs to complete to actually publish this podcast episode. Oftentimes, people get into ClickUp and all they do is take a parent task, assign it to multiple people with a start date and a due date, and essentially no one knows what they're actually in charge of, and no one knows where this podcast episode is, because we're really relying on just kind of communication and status updates and things like that. So we want to make sure we get all those subtasks built like this. That way I can assign each of these to specific people, and then they know exactly what they need to do for this podcast episode. In addition, once someone completes a task, then we know sort of, okay, we finished the podcast strategy or we finished the podcast outline. So make sure you take these and break them up into actionable pieces to assign out to individual people for them to complete. So as you can see here, the way that this is broken up, all of these are separate subtasks that will be assigned to one person. Someone's going to be in charge of the podcast strategy. Someone's going to be in charge of the outline. Someone's going to be in charge of the scheduling the interview, designing the thumbnail, completing the internal review of the thumbnail, so on and so forth. Make sure you go through those review cycles there as well. That's going to be super important. But again, break up all of these into actionable steps for each one to be assigned to an individual person. After you get all those steps in there, you'll also want to add in due dates. These due dates do not have to be specific dates of when they're actually going to be due. I'm just worried about creating a date map here and making sure that I'm worried more about the distance between the dates, because that's what really matters. Essentially, when you go and actually deploy a template, what I'm able to do is just say, hey, this podcast episode is going to be due on March 20th, and then it's going to remap all of these tasks with it, which is super cool. In addition, you also want to make sure you get your time estimates in here, regardless if you're tracking time or not as a team. The time estimates are going to be super important because this is what's going to sort of build up your workload view here inside of ClickUp. The workload view is going to be tied to your time estimates, due dates, and whoever is assigned to that task. So make sure you have time estimates in there so you can sort of see how much work is on your team's plate. After that, you're also going to get some custom fields in here as well. I'll go over those in just a bit, but you'll want to make sure you have some of these based off of sort of what you need. But again, we'll talk about custom fields very shortly. After that, another important piece with your process templates that you're going to want to do is you're actually going to want to build in dependencies to these tasks. The way that these work is it's kind of just going to fall in a waterfall fashion here. Essentially, what I'm most worried about is being able to remap these due dates in the future. So you can use the Gantt view, and I'll go over views later in this video, but if I come to customize with my Gantt view, I can hide and skip the weekends and turn on reschedule dependencies. And if I have these dependencies built in here just like this, and it's very easy to create dependencies, I'll delete that one and show you how to do it. All I need to do is drag from one task to the next, to the next, to the next, just like that. And now what I'm able to do is if something falls behind or one of these tasks don't get completed on time, I can drag that by the words like this, and it's going to take the whole process with it. So as you can see now, that's going to remap all these tasks, and it's also going to update the last sort of that parent task in this workflow here as well, because once we publish the blog, that means the blog is actually going to be complete. So that's how we would build out this process in workflow just like that. So kind of a great tip there for you. Build out your dependencies here inside of your workflows. That way you can easily remap due dates. So after that's done, you have dependencies, due dates, time estimates, as well as these custom fields. We're going to make sure that we also get some task descriptions and checklist items in here as well. So this is really where you're going to get a lot of productivity gains, because what you're able to do is you can either use this task description to embed a video in there. You can use it to show a template, an email template, whatever it may be, or I can link out to an SOP document that I have. Maybe it's in ClickUp or in another tool. That way the process lives where the work gets done. So essentially someone's going to come to this task. They're going to be assigned to creating the podcast strategy. They're going to go into their task. They're going to see the documentation for how to do it directly in this task description, making it super easy for them. In addition, I can also use checklist items in here for reminders of don't forget to do this, this, or that. That way the team is always doing things correctly the first time so that they don't have to go and redo it, and just make sure they follow the process there as well. So it's super important to do that. Get that extra detail in here because that's going to make your team way more productive and follow your proven process that you have as a team. So once you're done with all of those steps, what you're able to do now is you can come here and you can actually save this as a template just like that. So you kind of come through, you can enter the template name. This can just be podcast episode. I can customize import items. I would want to make sure I get rid of watchers. And then I can go ahead and save template. And the reason I say get rid of watchers is essentially if you build these processes here inside of ClickUp and then you leave watchers on, you're going to become a watcher on every single task really in your ClickUp workspace. So I highly recommend if you don't want to be a watcher in every task, just go ahead and click that off. So after you've saved that template, just make sure you do that over and over and over again for every single workflow that you do as a team, because that's going to be what makes your team more productive, and you're really going to get the efficiency, productivity, and visibility that you're trying to get out of ClickUp. So after we get all those sort of basic deliverables that we do as a team and all those processes are built out and we're ready to go, another important step, especially if you're going to be running campaigns within this campaigns folder, is what you want to do is you want to basically create a basic list template for this campaign. That way you don't have to go ahead and create a list from scratch every time and make sure I get all the views and things correctly. I can go ahead and just build that as a template with all the initial sort of campaign strategy and things like that. Build that as a list template. That way I can deploy this in the folder over and over again, and then there's a consistent structure here for the team. So what I can do is I can come in here, and as you'll see, I have some list templates built out here as well, and I can create just a basic list here called campaign setup. As you'll see, I'll have all the views that I'm going to need here, and then I can have a basic structure or workflow here that just has all those initial sort of filling out the campaign briefs. This is basically just going to be walking through the strategy before we actually go deploy a bunch of work into this campaign list. So just make sure you come in here, get your initial tasks, and build this just like I did the other process, like with that podcast episode, but make sure you have all the views and things like that as well, and you get this sort of structured the way you want it. And then after you're done with that, I can come in here and I can actually go ahead and save this as a list template as opposed to a task template. So a task template would just be saved here at the campaign brief and just bring all the subtasks and everything there. But when I save it as a list, I'm going to bring the views and the tasks and subtasks with it. So it's going to bring a little bit more. It's going to bring everything in this list. So I'll just come to templates here, save as a template, and follow the same process that I did with the task template that I saved with that podcast episode. After that, you just save your template, and then you're really good to go to start creating your work in the system. But before we actually go and create work in the system, I want to talk about one more thing before we get too carried away, and that's going to be the custom fields that I would recommend for you. So we kind of highlighted them and saw them when we were in this process library. The reason I didn't go over them quite yet is because there's really 4 main custom fields that I recommend. 3 of them are going to be built into your process templates, and then 1 of them is going to just be in your marketing space. So as we can see here, we saw all of these custom fields here. I want to make sure I highlight these just so you know what they are. So the 3 most important ones here that are going to be built into your actual process templates are going to be 3 different drop-down custom fields. So the first one is deliver role, and this is probably the most important and probably going to be the most helpful for your team. So the way that this works is your deliver role is essentially going to be the roles on your team. So this doesn't need to be tied to everyone's job titles. This can just be sort of loose roles that you might have that people might be sitting in. Someone might be doing multiple roles at this time, but as you grow, maybe each person only has 1 or 2 as opposed to maybe 5 or 6. But as you can see here, each of these tasks that I have is going to get a deliver role custom field assigned to it. Essentially, as you can see here, we have senior strategist, we have our copywriter, we have just a strategist, a designer, and there's a bunch of other roles we could put in here as well, like content managers, creative director, designer, developer, email marketer. Just think about those roles that you have on your team. And the reason this is so important is because A, this is going to help me assign work in the future. I'll show you what that looks like. And in addition, this is also going to help me make smart hiring decisions because I'm going to know, hey, we don't have enough copywriters on our team to complete all the copywriting work that we have in the system. So I can use this custom field to help me make those smart hiring decisions to know, hey, maybe we just need a contractor, maybe we need a full-time employee, and I can use that to help me out with that. In addition, you're also going to have a task type custom field, and this is really just so we can label different task types inside of ClickUp. So we just like to use this. There is a native task type feature in ClickUp right now, but there's just a little bit more flexibility when it comes to APIs, automations, and views and things like that with a custom field. So we're still using this as of now. But as you can see, I have task type non-actionable, actionable, meaning, time tracking, records, so on and so forth. This way I can just label those different tasks that I have inside of ClickUp. Because as you can see here, this podcast, this deliverable is not necessarily an actionable task that someone's completing. It's just a way to group up all of these actionable tasks. So we're going to use that, label that non-actionable, and then all of these are going to be actionable. In addition, the last one you have here that are built in your processes is work category. And work category is super important because this is going to be what helps you kind of see maybe how long you spent in a certain work category. You can also use this to create nice views where you can just see maybe work that's associated with web or social or SEO. However you want to group that up, use work categories because it's going to be helpful for you to create views and dashboards and things like that in the future. So think about things. Maybe you want to see just all of the content tasks together in one view. You can use this work category custom field to label it like that. But again, this is all going to be built here into your processes, but there's also one other custom field that you're going to want to leverage that's not built into your processes because it's going to get deployed onto those tasks later on. And so that custom field is going to be campaign. And so essentially that's going to live here in the campaigns folder, but you're going to have a basic drop-down custom field that's going to be applied to every task that's in that campaign. And the reason this is going to be super important is because this is going to help me create, again, views and dashboards in the future. So as you can see here, every task that gets into campaign 1 is going to have that campaign 1 custom field applied to it, as you can see here, and then campaign 2 would kind of follow the same structure where every single task inside of this is going to have that campaign 2 applied to it, as you can see right there. And so the reason this is super important is because if I go up to the folder level here, what I'm able to do is I can create a nice view here, really that shows me all those campaign and the tasks associated with that campaign, because I can group by that custom field just like this. So that's really the power of custom fields. Again, I can use them for views as well as dashboards to create nice views like this to see all of that work grouped together and things like that. So the cool part of this and sort of branching off custom fields and moving into an automation I would recommend is with this, I can actually automate this custom field getting deployed on all of these tasks rather than me having to go and apply it manually. So what I can do is in this campaign 1 list right here, if I go up to my automations in the top right, you'll see I have an automation set up that essentially what it does is it says when a task or subtask is created, set the custom field of campaign to campaign 1. So you're going to want to build that into all of your campaign lists. That way, every single task gets that campaign custom field applied to it without me having to go and manually do that. So those are the 4 main custom fields I'd recommend. Again, you're going to want to have work category, deliver role, task type, as well as campaign. So once we have our custom fields in order and we have all our processes built out, it's now time that we can actually start adding work here into ClickUp. So I want to walk you through that process. So I'm going to talk about actually setting up a campaign and how this would work. So essentially what I'm going to do is if we're going to be launching a new campaign, let's just say this is going to be campaign number 3, because I have obviously terrible campaign names here inside of this list, but for just lack of a better example here, let's just do that. So I'm going to come here, and if I want to build a campaign, I'm going to come here to my folder settings just like this. I can come into templates and I can browse templates, and I'm going to go ahead and find that campaign setup process template that I just put together. So as you can see, it's right there. It's all built out. I can use this template and I can go ahead and name it just like this. We'll do campaign number 3. And now I can go ahead and remap the dates for this as well. So the beauty of your process or the due dates that you put into your processes is essentially now what I'm able to do is I can come here and I can say, hey, when do we want to kick off this campaign? And let's say we want to start it on the 26th of February, just like that. I can also go ahead and skip the weekend. So if there's any tasks that are falling on a weekend based off of that first initial due date, it's going to actually move that to a Monday. So from there, what I'm able to do is I can come here and use this template. And after a little bit, it's going to load here. I'll hit refresh on my screen and we'll get our campaign 3 all built out and ready to go. So as you can see here, now I have campaign 3. It brought all of those views with me, and it also has the overall campaign brief tasks in here as well. As we can see, all those subtasks are built out. So we're good to go for the initial sort of build of our tasks in our list. The next step we're going to want to do before we do anything is actually go ahead and add that automation. So again, what you want to do is when a task or subtask is created just like this, we want to set the custom field of custom campaign to campaign 3, and you're going to have to go and add an option every single time you do this, which shouldn't take too long, but go ahead and add whatever the campaign name is, and then I'm going to go ahead and click create. That way every new task that I put into this list is going to get that campaign tied to it. So after that, another step you can do if you want is you can have and actually create a campaign doc here. So as you can see, I have the template, and I can just say this is campaign brief number 3, and this can basically be where I actually go and store all of this information. So again, you're going to want to have a campaign brief or strategy doc, whatever you use. You're going to want to have one of those built out here inside of ClickUp, and then you can either save this as a template so you can actually create doc templates, or I can just go ahead and have a template right here and I can go and duplicate it, which is a little bit easier. But again, just do it however you want, but that's kind of the workflow that you would follow there. In addition, so we're going to go through all of these tasks and basically complete these one by one. But as you'll notice, there's no assignees on these right now. So as I told you, we have a deliver role custom field that's deployed on basically all of these tasks. As you can see here, they're going to have a deliver role assigned to it. And so what I can do is I can come to this assignee view, and you'll see here. So as we can see, some of these tasks are assigned to a strategist, some of them are a proofer. And so what this is doing is this view that I have built out is grouping by delivery role. So it's going to be grouped by that custom field of deliverable. All the subtasks are going to be branched out as separate tasks. And what I can do now is I can grab all of these strategist tasks just like this, and I can set the assignee to myself, and I can come down to the proofer tasks, and I can do the same process. Let's say that the proofer is going to be Gray, and now I have all these tasks assigned out to both Gray and myself. And again, all those deliver roles that you have in there, as you get a bunch of tasks in here, it's going to follow the same process. It's just going to make it way easier to go ahead and assign this work out. In addition, let's say I needed to remap any due dates. I could use this date remap view. So I can come here, and as you'll see, if I have the proper settings set up inside of my GAN options with hide and skip weekends and reschedule dependencies, I can easily go and let's say that the approval is going to be moved out. I can take that and let's move that to March 4th. As you'll see, that's going to move out the whole sort of process and workflow that is dependent on that approving of the campaign brief. So that's an easy way to go ahead and remap those due dates there with the Gantt view. In addition, let's say now I've finished all these tasks. We kind of go through one by one and we're all good to go. Now we need to actually start deploying deliverables or things within this campaign. So now instead of, again, me having to go create tasks from scratch, I'm able to come here to this campaign number 3. I can go into my list settings just like this. I can go find my templates. I can browse templates, and I can actually come here and I'll go to task like this. And let's type in, oh, we already have it here. We'll do blog post. Let's say this is the first sort of deliverable we need in here. I can also name this. Let's just do blog post number 1 for campaign number 3. So whatever your blog post name is, you can go ahead and label that like that. And I can say this is going to be due on March 20th, just like this. And I can go ahead and use that template. So again, what this is doing now, instead of me having to go create these tasks from scratch, I'm leveraging the templates that I've saved in my ClickUp template center and deploying them just like this. And then I have all my due dates in here. I have my time estimates. I have all the custom fields that I need on these tasks. And now what I'm able to do is, again, I can come back to the assignee view and I can make sure all of these get assigned out. So whoever our copywriter is, I can come here and say that's Kuba, just like that. And that way I can get all of this work signed out super quickly, super efficiently, and make it way easier for my team to know exactly what they need to do here inside of ClickUp. So now let's talk about a few views that you want to actually leverage and use for your team so that they can do their work more efficiently and sort of see what they need to actually complete on a day-to-day. So oftentimes, and really the beauty of ClickUp is the fact that you might be looking at this and wondering, okay, so in terms of me finding my work, do I have to go through all of these individual these individual lists here to actually see that, oh, I need to deploy the campaign brief and build out the initial strategy? Like, is this how I'm going to be finding and seeing my work? And that answer is no. The beauty of ClickUp is that I can take all of the work that I have across these different campaigns, my marketing management folder, my internal tasks that I have as well, and I can actually go up to a higher level into my hierarchy. So I'm actually going to go to the everything level here, and I can build out a view here that shows me work across all those different folders and lists. So as you'll see here, what I have is a My Task view, which is essentially what this is doing is it's showing only the work that's assigned to me across, again, all of these different locations. So again, it's all organized and divvied up in those different campaigns and work categories and internal lists, but it's all funneled up for me so I can have one view as an individual contributor to see all of my work. So I have a My Task view here built out at the everything level. I can group this by due date just like that. I can make my subtasks as separate tasks, and I can also filter this down where the assignee is myself, and I can also add a location filter in this if I want to as well. So I just have the location list is marketing, which is essentially just showing me all the marketing work. So you can add that in if you want to, but essentially what this is going to do is it's just going to show me my work. And so I can see what's overdue, but I can also see what task this is, really what list it's a part of, and or what the parent task is, and then the list, folder, and space here. So I have all my breadcrumbs, and I know exactly what I have to do. I have to create a blog strategy for campaign number 1, blog post number 2. I have to schedule an interview. I have to schedule a blog publish date, so on and so forth. I see all of my work for overdue today, tomorrow, Monday. So that's very helpful for me to see exactly what I need to do. In addition, if I click into one of these tasks and you have all of your SOPs and things linked out into these tasks as well, I'm going to see it all right here for myself, and I can follow the action items here with a checklist as well, just to make sure that I know exactly how to do this specific task as well. Here I can also have time estimates and time track, so I can actually track my time right here, and it makes it way easier for your individual contributors to complete their work. And so after your My Task view, you might have some project managers or maybe some more management that just wants to see sort of workload across the team. And this is always super important because you don't want to overwork and you don't want to underwork your team members. So in ClickUp, there's a nice workload view that you can easily create that essentially allows you to see, based off of those time estimates, those due dates, and the assignees, you can see how much work they have on their plate. So you can start to see where someone is way over capacity, where they're basically at capacity, maybe where they're a little under. And again, this is built on the time estimates, the due dates, and the assignees, so it's super important that you have all of those built into your workflows and your process templates. That way you can easily go and actually have an accurate workload view here inside of ClickUp. And then after your workload view, there's a lot of other different views that you can create in ClickUp. That's really the beauty of it. A couple that I would recommend, we've talked a lot about sort of this campaigns view here that you can start to see work across multiple campaigns. Again, leveraging your custom fields to create that. We've talked about the assignee view here as well. You can build this into lists. You can build this into folders. Essentially, this is just grouping by that deliver role. This is why the custom fields are so important. You can leverage Gantt views for actually remapping due dates. But you can also create a lot of other things. Like a lot of people want to create content calendars. So here at the marketing space, if I wanted to see work across campaigns and marketing management, I could create a view here, a nice calendar view that essentially allows me to create a content calendar to see when we're actually publishing things here inside of ClickUp. So as you can see here, these are all of my deliverables. These are all the parent tasks that we're going to be completing. So I can come up here and I can actually put filters in here. And this is, again, where you're going to use your work category custom field. So I can say maybe I don't want that internal work. So I have work category is not operations. That's just what I've called all the work here in this internal folder. That's all going to be filtered out. Maybe you just wanted to see social posts. So I could just say where work category is maybe my social, if I had that as a work category here. So you can put things into your view, you could take things out of your view. And again, this is why all the custom fields and things like that are super important, because that's what's going to allow you to create a lot of these views here in the future. In addition, with this content calendar, if I wanted to customize it with different colors based off of where that task is living, I could do that as well. If I come in here to my calendar options, as you can see, I'm coloring tasks by that custom field of campaign. That way it's going to give it the color of whatever that custom field is colored for that campaign. So a lot of different things that I can do here to customize this to the way I want it. But again, there's a lot of different views that you can create in ClickUp. That's all going to be built into your hierarchy and the custom fields, and actually having good processes and good tasks here inside of ClickUp as well. And so after your views and after you've created all your tasks and your team is working in ClickUp, obviously another important piece is going to be the reporting with ClickUp dashboard. So one dashboard that you can create, and what I would recommend, is one for your campaigns. So if you want to start to see sort of overall campaigns for each individual campaign. Maybe again, you run these for a month or a quarter or a year, and you want to see sort of what the strategy was, what you actually completed, and what the results were. You can kind of come in here and create a nice dashboard inside of ClickUp that, again, it's going to show you. I can pull in this brief template just like this. I can then create some additional cards that show me my upcoming deliverables. I can show those closed deliverables here as well. So basically, these are just ones that we haven't completed, and these are ones that we have completed. And then in addition, you can also embed different reports in here as well. So if I want to pull in results from maybe a DataBox dashboard that I have, or even HubSpot, I can go and pull all that information in. And to do that, if you haven't learned much about dashboards, you can easily go and embed different websites in here, whether it's Google Sheets or Google Slides, or I want to do, again, a DataBox dashboard or HubSpot, I can do that here inside of ClickUp. So again, this is a great way to kind of show what our strategy was, what we actually did and completed, and what the results were from all that work. I can put all of that in one place. And there's a lot of other dashboards you can create. I'll just leave it at this example for now because I know this video is getting a little bit long, but hopefully that's helpful and gives you some ideas on how to set up your ClickUp workspace for your marketing team. So hopefully this video gave you a good grasp for the ways that you can set up your ClickUp workspace to more efficiently run your marketing operations inside of ClickUp. But obviously, ClickUp is a super powerful, flexible, and customizable tool, and there's a lot more that we could talk about in terms of being more productive inside of ClickUp. So a couple next steps for you. First, if you haven't, I highly recommend you download our How to Use ClickUp guide. You'll see that up here in the top right corner. Go download that. It's pure gold, 56 pages of really everything from pricing plans to hierarchies to views to custom fields to process templates. It's going to walk you through everything you need to know about ClickUp. So download that first. And then secondly, after that, if you're ready to fully streamline your operations inside of ClickUp, go to zenpilot.com/call and book a call with one of our experts. At Zenpilot, we've helped close to 3,000 different teams streamline their operations in ClickUp to build more productive, profitable, and healthy teams, and we're ready to do the same for you. So go do that, book a call, and get your free roadmap to success. And after that, if you haven't yet, if you've enjoyed this video, if this channel is helpful for you, go ahead and click subscribe as well as like this video. We're going to continue to deliver content weekly for teams trying to get the most out of ClickUp. And with that, that's all I have for you today. I'll see you again next time.
I make no more, I can't replace it. Trying hard just not to waste it. It's about time. Yeah, it's about time.